Hey, Raven here. Before we start this episode, want to warn our listeners that the topic of suicide is brought up fairly regularly throughout. So if this is a difficult topic for you, you might want to go ahead and skip this one. We will be sharing some resources in the show notes. Hope you enjoy the episode if you decide to listen. Welcome to Who Are You, a CSI podcast. I am Raven, and I've seen CSI thrown through around 3 to 4 times.
And I'm Nick, and these are my first time experiencing these episodes.
And today we are reviewing Season 3, Episode 21, Forever. Original air date is May 1st, 2003. Director is David Grossman. Writers are Anthony E. Zeiker and Sarah Goldfinger. And we don't start today with shots of the Vegas Strip.
No, however, we do have a maximum 55.
Okay, I thought so. Especially my second watch through, I was like, wow, there's a lot of cutscenes and like lingering cutscenes of Vegas. And a lot of like the plane scenes and airport
Background
scenes.
shots.
Vegas is in the background.
I didn't even count those. And they were so like CGI and weird.
They were weird.
But at some point, I think very early on where we're starting, oh, good, another plane.
I had the exact same thought. I was like, oh no, a plane. But
yeah, there's eight more shots. But you're right, they're actually long, fairly long. So like
I feel like
shot
they
is
held
3.
there.
We have a lot of 4s and even a 5.
Oh wow,
second hold. So,
all right, so we had some time to fill in this episode, evidently.
Yeah. It's 16, 22, 27, 30 seconds. So again, a full commercial break's worth of Las Vegas scenes.
Interesting. So as Nick mentioned, we start with an airplane, which has not treated us well in CSI land in the past. But we see this airplane. There's like nice little like dancey music going on. We go inside the plane. This is a swanky plane party going inside. We see a blonde woman, and this is my first spot. The guest star. So
yeah, that's funny. As this woman looked familiar to me, I do not know her from anything.
So Miss Fitzgerald Harper, the actor's name is Elaine Hendricks, and I know her primarily from The Parent Trap. She is Meredith Blake in The Parent Trap, and
the newer one,
the one with Lindsay Lohan, the 1998 film. And I don't think my sister listens to this podcast, but if she does, this was like her comfort movie growing up. So I've seen this movie, I don't know, 900 times. Like, not really, but like I've seen it so many times that as soon as I saw her, I was like, yep. I was like, it is the villain, quote unquote, from The Parent Trap. So she's in quite a few other things. Like she's in Rami and Michelle's high school reunion, so I probably recognize her from that. But 100% top what I know her from is The Parent Trap. But she's also in 57 episodes of Dynasty. So if you've ever watched Dynasty, maybe. Or if you watched Dynasty between 2019 and 2022, maybe.
Yeah, that's a remake show, right? That's an old 80s, I think, nighttime drama.
Yeah,
show.
And then I think they like remade it. I don't know. But I know her primarily as Meredith Blake, but she is my first spot, the guest star of this episode. They then hit some turbulence. So everyone has to like sit down, but the camera ends up going to the cargo area, the storage area of the plane.
So I do actually technically have a spot the guest star in this scene
do
as
it.
well.
Yes, before we get to the horse.
The steward in this.
Okay, I'm glad you did, because I went through, this is Jonathan Slavin.
Yeah.
And I went through his IMDb. He's in so many things that I know I've seen him somewhere else, but I can't pinpoint specifically where I know him from.
I feel like I know him from more than this, but the thing that I definitely know him from is Better Off Ted.
Oh, okay.
Which is a NBC sitcom. It stars 2 people, one of which you'll probably recognize, one of whose name you might not recognize.
Fair.
But Portia de Rossi, who is Ellen DeGeneres' wife, and famous of her own right.
Yep.
And however, the male lead, Ted, in that show, his name is Jay Harrington. Fun fact, Jay Harrington's father is my father's boss, or was for 20 years.
Weird. Oh my gosh. Small world.
And technically, I met him when he was like a kid at the company, but I don't even remember him.
Yeah.
It's always funny, but my dad would hear about Jay Harrington's acting jobs and things from his boss, and he would come and we would always like watch those things. And actually, one of the more notable ones where I probably would have watched on my own was they made an American version of a British show called Coupling.
Oh, okay.
And any other role. That was like one of those things where I don't remember if it aired, if it was I must have, because I feel like I saw it, or it was just a pilot. But a lot of these shows got canceled. But he is now in the TV show SWAT.
Oh, okay.
He's not in this episode, so he's not. I have no idea if he's in any CSI episode, but if he ever is, it'd be really hilarious.
It would be funny.
One of the main characters in the TV show SWAT now. So,
all right.
But my dad would always watch that show when it was on, and I think that maybe that's primarily what I know him from.
That's fair.
So in that show, Jonathan Slavin, he plays one of like these two like lab people, and I think they're always coming up with a weird stuff the company is working on. I forget the character's name. I feel like I wrote it down, but I guess not. But yeah, he's in Better Off Ted.
Okay. All right. Well, so we start this episode to spot the guest stars. I like it. So we go to the cargo area of the plane, and there is a horse there, and there's also a dead body with the horse. We then have Grissom and Catherine entering
the horse. Let's spot the guest star for anyone.
The horse? No, I'm sorry.
It's probably a famous horse. He's probably been in other stuff you've seen.
I'm sure it probably has been. Yeah.
Only so many working horses.
Yeah. So Grissom and Catherine enter a hangar. Jim Brass is already there. Horse is there. This is where we learn that the victim is Lori Hutchings. She was essentially the horse's like trainer and caretaker. And
Handler,
Grissom wants to start the investigation with the horse, of course.
Yeah, it was I didn't know what bad pun they were going to go with there. That was probably one of the better options.
Yep. And so that brings us to credits, our little pun segmentation to credits. We then have Catherine with the pilots and the steward, and they're all singing Lori's praises. They're saying that she was super sweet, that she opted to stay with the horse, and one of the pilots said that they set up like specifically for her an emergency call button in that cargo area so that if something did go wrong, she can like press the emergency button and they can, send assistance. And she never used it. So during the flight, she never hit the emergency call button.
I think maybe there's one of the few things on a rewatch that I was like, oh, okay. Was like, maybe it's important how good of a person she is. Yes. Like how much she cares, because I think that may inevitably play into the
downfall.
Characters. Oh, yeah, death, inevitable.
Yes, her inevitable death.
Inevitable downfall.
Yeah. No, I agree entirely. We pan over to Grissom. He's taking pictures of the hay. He finds scissors. Nick walks up, and they're talking for a little bit, and we learn that the horse is now in quarantine. So the horse has to go into mandatory USDA quarantine. So that's where the horse is.
Which I think is just because it flew into the country and has nothing to do with the murder.
It has nothing to do with the murder. No, it's just they flew overseas. And so the horse has to be quarantined to make sure it's not carrying something that could potentially infect horses that we have here.
Mad horse disease.
So in addition to the scissors, Grissom finds tranquilizer darts and a tranquilizer gun. Catherine then enters the cargo area of the plane. She finds these brown pieces, which we'll come back around to. So she collects those. And again, I love Catherine, but I feel like they have been having her not follow protocol like crazy. So she's in this cargo area. She sees a triangular dart sticking to the ceiling, takes no pictures, wears no gloves, moves things around in the cargo area, just grabs a set of sticks. Part of the scene, just grabs a ladder, sets the ladder up, grabs the dart. I'm like, Catherine, there are protocols for a reason. What are you doing, my friend?
Following protocols for the camera in this episode.
Yeah, that was. I had to write that one down because I was like, what are you doing? Nick enters, and they're wondering why, if the victim had a collection of small syringes, were they using a tranquilizer dart gun for the horse? And as they're debating this, Nick also finds a footprint in poop And it is not the same type of shoe that the victim was wearing. So evidently somebody else stepped in the horse poop and then, was in the cargo area. We leave storyline A. We get introduced to storyline B. We have Sarah, Warwick, and Lockwood, Detective Lockwood, in Death Valley. There is a boy in a suit, and he's posed, essentially, like posed as if he was in a casket, just out in the middle of Death Valley. We learn that this victim's name is Toby Wellstone. He has a transdermal patch on his hand, a fentanyl patch. So they are leaning towards that he died of a purposeful OD.
There's maybe a really weird anachronism here where they are trying to explain to the audience what fentanyl is.
And now we're in a fentanyl crisis, so we all know what fentanyl is. Yes.
I guess, yeah, it's like you wouldn't need to do that today.
You would not need to do that today.
Or at least you wouldn't. You would spend a little bit less time on it, but I was like, yeah, I guess like there was a point 10 years ago where I didn't really know what fentanyl was, but
right,
you hear it so much that
we hear it so much now. Yeah,
and it's such an innocuous thing. There's no reason why there couldn't have been a fentanyl crisis 20 years ago. It's not like this great technological advancement that occurred. It's just it wasn't a problem, and now it's a widespread problem.
Now it's
back then it was OxyContin or something else.
Yeah. No, now it's fentanyl. So they also notice these wheel marks at the scene. They can't tell what they're from. They're trying to they're debating a few options about what these wheel marks are, but don't worry, we'll get the answer, our listeners. We then have Catherine and Jim Brass. They're in the cabin of the plane, and Jim Brass is saying that he got the cabin manifesto, and of course it's all, all the people in the plane are a pain in the butt because they're all wealthy people that don't want to be
in this plane.
Yeah, there's no seats, and Nick is also there, and we learn there's a DNA party. So evidently, a lot of people were joining the Mile High Club on the plane, but there's also bloody towels in a trash bin. So that doesn't look great.
I do applaud them for their safe sex practices.
I do too. Yeah, they used condoms, so kudos.
Hygiene could be better, but
hygiene definitely could be better. But kudos on the condom usage. Catherine and Grissom then walk into where the horse is being quarantined. They basically walk by the owner who's not being allowed in to see the horse. They're like, flash my badge. I get to go in. You have to stay out here. So they go in.
This is not the blonde lady,
no,
though, right?
No.
A completely different person that we never really see or talk to again.
So she gets referenced. We never see her talk to her again, but she does get referenced later on in the episode. So
I was confused, and then I convinced myself it was the person who owned the plane. And then when I watched it a second time, I was like, no, it's not.
No, she owns the horse.
Yeah.
So Catherine and Grissom are there to see the horse. They also talk to Dr. Stevens. They need to pull some samples from the horse. This is where we learn that the horse is prone to uterine infections. So they essentially keep her sewed up until it's time for breeding to try to prevent these uterine infections. And Dr. Stevens is letting them know that you would never use a tranquilizer dart on a horse. It would essentially cause the opposite reaction of what you're hoping to cause. So he's like, it wouldn't make any sense for somebody to try to use a tranq on a horse.
Which is weird because they never really explain why it exists at all.
No, they don't. Well, maybe, if they were in Africa, maybe it was for
or
big game hunting. You know what I mean? People want to pose with lions and stuff.
Yeah, we can make up.
Yeah, we make up whatever we want.
Really,
no, they never do.
That loop?
No, you're right. I guess I never even really thought about it, but it's true. It's just that is not the purpose of why the train cut is there.
I was wait a second, wait, what?
Wait a second.
And then I was paying attention the whole episode.
Yeah, you're they're going to answer it. We're going to get there. No, you did not. You didn't. Sarah and Warwick were with them at the morgue. No one has come to claim the body. We learned that he's been in and out of a bunch of foster homes. And we learned from Doc Robbins that he took an additional drug. So not just fentanyl, he took an additional drug that actually helped speed up the fentanyl absorption and also prevented him from puking. So he couldn't empty the contents of, his stomachs and throw it out.
There's a time on the patch, but they say patch and pill at some point.
Yes.
Probably they took both oral and patch fentanyl.
Yes. Yeah. They took both versions of it. And this is where we learned that he had previous suicide attempts or, he has marks on his wrist. So from best estimation, he has previously attempted suicide.
Yeah. Doc Robbins gives some statistic about people committing suicide who who may have attempted it previously in the show. He's got a couple of marks on his wrist, and
Yeah.
you're just sort of led to believe that this is
Yeah.
not his first attempt.
Yep, exactly. We go to Catherine studying the shavings, the pieces that she picked up on scene. Nick enters, and we have a shoe print match. We don't see the matchy, but behind the scenes, matchy happens, and we have a match. We then have Grissom with Doc Robbins. She has pinpoints in her eyes. So she was definitely trampled by the horse. Like, there's consistent injuries, trampled by the horse, but she has pinpoints in her eyes. And she was the one that was tranquilized. She has like this big old puncture wound from where the tranquilizer dart was shot like right into the back of her shoulder neck area.
Actually, like, spoiler alert, I eventually figured out that it wasn't actually shot. It was like stabbed.
Yes. But we don't know that.
I kind of was like,
at this point.
Yeah, I was kind of like thinking you would almost expect bruising potentially. Like,
from a stab.
There's just so much force, especially
going
to be a short range on an airplane. Not like we're shooting you from 100 yards away.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think if they were implying that. And I actually almost kind of like had that idea, I think, in the first episode, their first watch through, but they don't actually say it in the second watch through. So it's sort of like a weird thing where like my brain kind of like went there. I think also it's like a downward angle from the top. Is they show it's like at the top of her clavicle. Imagine
it'd be a weird
the ricochet that would have to happen.
We just had the episode with the Jackass guys in the warehouse and with them doing the trajectory
roulette or whatever it was.
Yeah, bamboo Russian roulette.
Yeah, bamboo Russian roulette.
Yeah. So we then go to Nick and Jim Brass with our first spot, the guest star, Miss Fitzgerald, who wants to be called Harper. It is her plane, and she does admit to going down to the cargo hold. She's like, well, it's my plane, so I can do what I want. And then they're like, okay, yes, you can, but like you need to explain to us why you were down there. And she was down there trying to woo Lori. So she wanted Lori to train her horses. So she was trying to woo her away, like trying to offer her like as much money as she wanted to train her horses instead.
And again, this other person's horse is on this plane for some other reason. We never really.
They don't really explain that.
Get an answer to that question.
We don't really get an answer to that question. We're back then with Sarah and Warwick and Detective Lockwood. They're back in the desert. And they have found a female victim wearing a prom dress, and she has the same fentanyl patch on her hand. So it looks like we have a related death.
Or a serial killer.
Or a serial killer.
For a very short period of time, I thought could have been.
Oh, okay, fair.
Well, here's the thing, and this bothers me later on in the episode. I don't feel like they framed the first victim in a way that implies that a person would be laying next to them. They're very deliberately in the center of the blanket with their head on a pillow.
Yeah.
And like, if they were going to be murdered together or staged together, even though the bodies were found not that far from each other, you would think that the spacing would have been arranged in such a way to suggest that. And they don't do that for whatever reason. And so it's like, it's almost like, was this an afterthought, or was this going to be the next victim? Something happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it was sort of became like this idea in my head initially where I was like, oh, something wrong. And then I eventually very quickly was like, oh no, I get it. They just wanted the gotcha moment with a second body. And I was
That's what they wanted.
Those are the things that typically make me less like when they pull it off really well. Those are the things that make me love episodes of CSI. So when they don't even try, I'm just kind of like, oh, come on, guys. I've seen you do this.
Yeah. So we then have Grissom walking into where Catherine is. She's in the lab. And there are three like fingerprint matches on the handrail going down to the cargo. So one is Harper. Like, they already know that. But then it's the steward, and then who we will learn is a concierge. We also learn in the scene that the brown shavings that Catherine found on the scene and has been examining are tobacco from a Cuban cigar. So then that transitions us to Jim Brass and Catherine with said concierge. And he, after some prodding, admits that he went down to the cargo. Like, he just couldn't help himself. He wanted to like see what was down there. And so he goes down there. He sees Lori dead, but he keeps his mouth shut because like he's just starting to get invited to these fancy parties and he doesn't want to mess it up. So he's like, okay, yeah, I was down there. I saw the body, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be the buzzkill of the party.
Oh, nor did I tell anyone when I got off the plane, because it was like the maintenance crew that found the body, right?
Yes.
I think they said at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so it's like then I got off the plane and then decided to keep my mouth shut.
Yep. Also didn't say anything. So not looking great for our concierge at this point in time. We are then with Sarah. She's swabbing the dress and she's realizing that it was hand stitched. She walks over to where Warwick is, and we learn that the victims had the same stomach contents. We also learn that each other's prints are on the other one's patch. So they helped each other apply the fentanyl patches. So it seems like at this point that both were like willing participants in this double suicide. Lockwood then walks in, and the mom is coming in to ID the girl's body. So Sarah and Lockwood are with the mom, and we learn that the victim is her daughter, Jill Frommer. And she's saying like Jill's not domestic, and Sarah's like, oh, did she like make this dress herself? And she's like, what? No, like Jill's not domestic at all. I don't know what you're talking about. And we learned that she was one of Toby's foster parents, but had to send him back after her husband died of cancer. But about a year ago, Jill brought Toby back home because he was being abused where he was staying at that point in time. So
that corresponds to he's been fell off the planet a year ago.
Yeah. So we have Greg Sanders with Catherine, and we learned that the bloody towels collected on the scene it's the victim's blood, but there's two epithelials, like there's two skin cells from two different people on the towel. One being the victim, and the other one they don't have a match for yet. So they need to get additional samples.
A weird kind of Greg dialogue moment here.
Well, he wants to be out on the he's very much
more DNA.
Yeah, he's like, get me more DNA. He's like, I want to be out there, so get me more DNA. So that transitions us to Catherine and Grissom back with Dr. Stevens. The horse has died. So we have another victim in this tale today. The horse has died. Grissom is trying to figure out, because he found these scissors at the scene. He's like, is there any chance that Lori tried to relieve the infection on the flight? And Dr. Stevens like that if she did, it would have had to be an emergency. It's not, we don't want to be performing surgery on a horse mid-flight. So
it was like thread, you know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure like you could remove those stitches and it wouldn't be surgery. It's just like, what would the next thing you would do
after that?
I think really what she's getting at is like, it's like you couldn't do anything anyways.
Yeah. So we have a horse necropsy done. So for those who are unfamiliar, when a person dies and we perform the examination to try to determine cause of death and things of that nature, it's called an autopsy, as I'm sure you've heard us say a million times on the show, right? But when it's an animal, it's called a necropsy. So they do a necropsy on the horse, and she has pyometria in her uterus. And so the woman, the surgeon, takes the uterus out. They're examining it. And look at that. There's a bag inside the uterus. And inside that bag are uncut diamonds.
Lots of them. Again, I take a little bit of umbrage here with, this is one of those moments I was referring to earlier with protocols. Like,
he just cuts the bag without like
this autopsy. You're covered in horse blood.
Yep.
You're covered in horse blood.
Yep.
And you're just gonna cut the bag open with a random scalpel.
Yep.
And then dump them into.
Well, it's a surgical. It is a surgical. Tray. Yeah, but it's like a surgical, a perfectly clean tray.
Again, you could be photographing you don't know what's in this bag.
Yeah,
you have no idea what's in here.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like, but you got to do it on camera for the audience. It's like very much.
Yeah.
It's really obvious why they're doing it, but it was like just another check mark, right? Like another little, okay, we're doing most things for the camera this episode.
Yeah. So we leave storyline A behind for a little bit. We go to storyline B. Sarah and Warwick are at a high school. They're talking to a group of high school girls, and one of them is a Spot the guest star.
Oh, which one?
The blonde girl. She's literally credited as right teen.
Okay, yeah.
So that's what her credit is. This is Ariel Kebbel. And I know her as Lexi from the Vampire Diaries.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Right.
I was wondering if you were going to get this one because I was like,
oh my god. Yeah, I was gonna say that was the one that I thought was like. Here's the thing, like as I said, there's a certain part where it's like this is like a very stereotypical look, like Valley girl. I don't know. I didn't put anything into it, or like most of the people I went to high school and college with, right? And I was like, why do these people look familiar? I was like, whatever.
no, it's because she's Lexi from the Vampire Diaries. That's why she looks familiar. That's what I was like. When I figured it out, I was like, Nick is totally gonna get this because he like has watched the Vampire Diaries.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So she doesn't play a super important role in this episode. She is literally credited as right teen, but she still deserves a spot the guest star because that is in fact what she is. So we learn from these girls that the dress the victim was wearing was a dress made by a fellow classmate named Alyssa. She made it and wore it. So that brings Sarah and Warwick to a hospital. They talk to Alyssa, and she's like, "Yep, I gave her the dress." Like, and then she's like, "Oh, she committed suicide, didn't she?" Because they're asking her, like, "Did you prescribe her the fentanyl and the other medication?" And she's like, "Oh no, did she commit suicide?" And they were kind of like, "Well, why would you ask that?" And she's like, "Oh, giving away worldly possessions. She traded me a necklace for the dress, even though I said she didn't need to." And
which isn't giving away, by the way.
No, it's a trade.
Trading. But I know you like it's like you didn't need to, but like
yeah.
It's a little bit different. Like you can just give somebody something in exchange for something because you feel like you owe it to them, not because you're going to trying to get rid of your material possessions.
I agree entirely. But she says, "Look, I didn't give her the drugs. I wouldn't even if I could." But she points to a camera, essentially saying, like, they're watching me all the time. Like, there's no way that I can just like give away these like highly regulated drugs.
Also, it probably scan them all the time. Like, yeah. In other words, like, couldn't be me. There would be other evidence, and I'm sure. Again, this is great. I mean, this is the appropriate use of. I'm sure they checked into it, right?
Yeah. They do mention later on that they checked into it, and she wasn't the one who did it. So we pop back in with Catherine. She is in an office. Grissom enters. We learn that it is Dr. Stevens' office, and he is just inexplicably left down. He just pieced out of this joint. See you later.
He's gone to Mexico. We don't hear from him ever.
Never hear from him again. He's gone.
He got away scot-free.
Evidently. I mean, as far as we know, there's no follow-up here. They do discover in the office, though, diamond dust and red lentils. And if you don't remember from earlier in the episode, the diamonds were bagged with red lentils because it helps them from chipping while you're moving them, while you're shipping them.
Lentils in his trash can compared to
so many
poured out. You had 5 bags. I was like, oh, I thought he had like 50 bags. I was like, that is a lot of diamonds. That's the number of lentils.
Yeah.
But no, it was not it was only supposed to be 5 more of those little bags.
Yep. So we then have, actually, this is like a perfect transition. We go with Grissom. He is examining the diamonds. Catherine is there with him. And Catherine, this is where she calculates that there are 5 bags in total, so they're looking for 4 more bags. Like, theoretically, obviously they don't know for sure, but like from the space that's within the horse's uterus and the size of the bags and the weight and things like that, they calculate it all out, and they think they're looking for 4 more bags. Sorry, what was that?
I think they said they counted the lentils.
Yes, I think they counted the lentils. I think you're right.
Like, based on the number of lentils in bag 1, based on the number of lentils in the trash can, it was X number of bags.
Yeah. And we also learn in this scene from Grissom that, while not definitive, most likely the diamond is from Central Africa and is probably a conflict diamond. So this is a diamond that should not be making its way into the United States. So we stay in storyline A. We are with Jim Brass. He is with the steward, and he's like, "Hey, like you've been to Central Africa, like what's going on?" And the steward is very upfront. He's like, "Look, I became a steward because I wanted to travel the world, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to travel, see the world, and experience the world." And he's like, "And I don't get to." Like, yes, I technically get to travel the world. Like, I go to these locations.
Yeah.
He's like, but I'm just essentially like a glorified UPS. Like, I just go, grab whatever random package they want me to, bring it back to the plane, and then fly back. Like, I don't get
Yeah.
to experience any of these places that we're going to.
It's a passenger.
Just a passenger. So, but he does have a story for why his skin cells, we learn in the scene that it is his skin cells on the bloody towels that were pulled from the bin. He has a story for this, though, in that he says that he took the bloody towels from Lori. So when he went to go deliver her food, the horse had been spooked. She had gotten like a cut on her arm. And so she had, used these towels to apply pressure to the wound to stop the bleeding. And she gave them to him. And so he put them in the bin because Miss Fitzgerald Harper had requested his assistance. So
She needed help with a zipper or something.
yes, she needed help with a zipper. So
I don't like the scene because I feel like they, in a real like investigation, they would have done more like, she was literally dead and she was bleeding moments before her death and you didn't think to tell us that. Or
yeah.
And it's like, you could tell that they're not pushing back because he's not supposed to be lying or obfuscating. It's that we just didn't want to tell you about this because then we wouldn't have this like random piece of evidence to track down later. And it's like, okay, come on. We're all adults here.
We are all adults here. Well, maybe not. I don't know. We're technically a family-friendly podcast, so technically you don't have to be.
No, I mean like, listen to this podcast. I mean like, we don't need these little gag.
No, I know what you mean.
Like, where's the real? Let's build a real episode here.
Okay. I think we're giving a sneak peek of how Nick feels about this episode.
This plot line A feels really phoned in to me.
Okay, that's fair. Well, we can leave plot A behind for a little bit. We're with Sarah and Warwick. They have a nice little walk and talk. They walk into where Greg Sanders is, and this is where we learn that the white substance that was found on both of the victims is baby spittle, but not just any baby's baby spittle. Their baby's baby spittle, because Greg pulled DNA and then match it. It is their baby. So the next two scenes are we kind of cut between them. There's people canvassing the desert. We are supposed to believe it is trying to find the baby, because now they're thinking, oh my gosh, these two people have a baby. Where is the baby? There wasn't a baby near either one of them. Where is the baby? So we see a bunch of uniformed people canvassing the desert, and cut with that is Sarah, Warwick, and Lockwood at a home. And before they walk inside, we learn that the mom purchased a suit, like a young men's suit, which that's strange if she didn't know anything about this. So they go inside, they're searching the kitchen, they find the drugs. She just didn't think to get rid of the drugs, evidently. The fentanyl and the other. It was like our husband's cancer medication. I was like, get rid of it.
Some of it's her medication.
Some of it is hers for her back.
They probably should have already known.
Yes, they should run some numbers and see if there's a prescription to anybody in the house to either of these medications.
And honestly, the other medication would have been to someone in the house. Like there's a lot of like opportunities for them to figure that out. However, the rest of the scene, I mean, come on.
Okay, well, let's get into it. Let's dive in. So as they're standing in the kitchen talking about this, they hear a baby cooing, and they open the fridge door.
Refrigerator.
Yes, they open the fridge door. The baby monitor is in the fridge.
It has a power button, Mom.
You can hide it off.
Sure.
Yeah.
But also, did you think they were gonna just kind of find the baby when they got to that room anyways? The baby monitor got them nothing.
Yeah. So no. So they see the baby monitor, which leads them to another room in the house, and there is a baby there. Not, as Nick pointed out, no attempt to hide the fact that there's a baby there. The baby's in the middle of the room in a bassinet, like
with a search warrant, right?
Yeah. They had a search warrant.
They were gonna find the baby when they got to that room.
Yeah.
Like they were gonna search every room.
Yeah.
So finding the baby monitor in the fridge was really just unnecessary tension. I thought it would have been so much better if she just had the baby in the fridge. I'm sorry.
Oh no!
Cruel of me.
It'd be terrible.
Not exactly a stand-up parent.
You could kill the baby by keeping it in the fridge.
It's a TV show. That's what I mean. Yeah, my point is the woman is like, desperate.
Yeah, I mean, she is desperate. Well, she's not desperate. Well, I don't know if desperate's the right word for her. Yeah. So they're talking to the grandmother of the baby, and she knows her stuff. She's like, look, watching people kill themselves, not against the law in Nevada. Yep, I was there, but like
Yeah.
there's nothing that says I can't watch them kill themselves.
I mean, that part of it, I get.
Yeah. So
Everything else, though, like they got to be able to get her on something.
yeah, so Sarah's like, look, we're going to arrest you. We're going to take the baby. We're going to have to get the baby over to child services. And and she's like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's like a misdemeanor. Like not preventing harm to a child is a misdemeanor. She's like, oh, it's like a parking ticket. I was like, really? I feel like that should be a weightier charge.
No, I mean, if this were to happen in real life, this would be the case that would make it a law. It felt right.
Yes.
It would become
yeah.
law. I forget what the kids' names are. It would become
Toby and
Jill's
Toby
law.
and Toby and Jill.
Yeah, Toby and Jill's law. You know.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would have been the impetus. That's often how these things become like more serious, bigger laws.
That's true.
You have situations like this.
Yeah.
But like she definitely did all these other things. She definitely drove them there. She definitely knew they had her drugs. She definitely so she did more than just watch.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. She provided them with they wouldn't have had the fentanyl patch if it wasn't for her. Like, she didn't physically put it on them, but
even just like reckless endangerment,
right?
Providing illicit substances to a minor,
right? Yeah.
There are all sorts of things, and that's the thing that a jury would be like, why aren't they charging her for murder? But then be like, well, she's still going to jail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I think they're right in the sense that they're not gonna be able to get her for murder. Like Sarah's like, we're gonna charge you with murder, and then after they take her out of the home, Sarah turns to Warwick and is like, do you think we stand a chance? And he's like, no.
He's probably gonna plea for something, he's mostly going to get away with a lot of it. But
I agree, but I do think there's more that they can charge her with that they don't really go into details with. But
that's kind of like, that's almost like one of the things where I was like, I wish they harped on that a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there aren't that many more things they can get her.
Maybe not. I don't know. This is not, thankfully, something I have experience with, so I don't know.
I don't have a law degree. I don't practice in the state of Nevada.
Nope. I don't have kids. I don't foster children. So I have foster mice and rats. That's about as close as I have at the moment.
I don't think Grandma has like a Alta Vista search out there somewhere. Is it illegal to watch your kids kill themselves?
Oh goodness, Alta Vista. So that
is on Yahoo, but
yeah.
Ask Jeeves.
Ask Jeeves. That is the end of storyline B. That's where we land with storyline B. So we're not at the end of the episode, though, so we have a little bit more of storyline A. We have a Catherine and Grissom walk and talk. We learn at the scene that there are carrots on the diamonds, which leads them to believe that Lori was also in on the drug muling. So she was a participant in the transportation of these diamonds, right?
Part of the collusion club.
Yes, perfectly stated. So Catherine, Nick, and Grissom are talking, and they come to the conclusion, or they're discussing the fact that if you're going to be smuggling diamonds, you need a buyer. If you're going to, this is a pretty high risk operation here. You're not going to just smuggle them in and figure it out. Like, you probably already have a buyer figured out before you start smuggling them in.
And they're uncut diamonds too, right? So
they are uncut diamonds. Yes.
A jeweler, it's got to be. So it's not just somebody who's making jewelry out of a finished diamond. There's somebody who has the skill to cut diamonds, which is a more niche skill set.
So this leads Catherine to want to know our concierge's mother's maiden name, because she thinks maybe she sold her engagement ring, which leads me to believe, did Catherine buy her own engagement ring?
Yeah, I was like, it's like, that is the way that she phrased it.
That's how she phrased it.
Knowing Eddie,
it's possible. It's possible. Rest R.I.P. Eddie. Not really. I don't care. But I mean, I feel bad that you left a daughter behind. But beyond that, I don't really care. R.I.P. Eddie. So we're with Jim Brass. He's at Kenzie Jewelry. They're seizing the diamonds, and she's assumingly his mother is throwing a bit of a fit. And Jim Brass is like, did you not stop to think about like where your son got these diamonds from? Like, did that never decided to ask any further questions?
She's got I don't know if they probably won't get her. She's got money. She'll probably let her son go to jail.
Yeah.
Save herself. But, I think we would all believe deep down inside that she knew what was going on.
One would imagine that there were conversations. So we're with Grissom and Jim Brass. They're with the concierge. And again, after some convincing, he coughs up. Coughs up his involvement. And we learned that the murder happened because Lori, at the end of the day, cared more about the horse than she did the diamonds. So when push came to shove, when she thought the horse's life was in danger, she wanted to remove the diamonds. She wanted to go in and unstitch the horse and remove the diamonds. And so they got into a struggle. And we see on his chest the kickback from the tranquilizer gun. This time, unlike, I don't know if it was our last episode, it was the Bamboo Russian Roulette episode that they were just like, take your clothes off, and had no warrant. This episode, they're like, take your shirt off, but we do have a warrant for you to take your shirt off.
Brass still like makes the weird threat, like,
yeah, that's not where we're stopping. Like, we could go further, and I was like, whoa,
stop threatening to violate.
Please stop threatening to violate people, Jim Brass. It is not pleasant. And so that is the end of the episode. So I have a feeling I already know the answer to this, but Nick, I want you to confirm, or I want you to further elaborate. What are your thoughts on today's episode?
One final note on this last scene.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
It's almost like interesting to think the idea that, what did this guy think was going to happen when this horse got landed, had to go into quarantine, and was very sick and dying, that they were probably going to have a dead horse and find the diamonds. He was going to get them anyways.
No, but Dr. Stevens would have performed the surgery, and he was in on it.
While he was in quarantine, because he had access while he was in quarantine.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe. Of course, he was in on it too. But also, like, I don't know. Sometimes you come back in this country, they're not really checking your bags that well. If you're rich, and this is, I guess this is post 9/11, but pre the taking your shoes off and putting your liquids in a plane.
Yeah.
In a bag, it's like I almost feel like you could have just got the diamonds in anyways. But yeah, storyline A, I don't like it at all. Storyline B is not without its flaws. I like it a lot more. It was kind of an interesting storyline, and I think it was a great like storyline B story, like, because it didn't take up a lot of time, but it was kind of interesting. You couldn't quite put it together. Overall, I didn't give this a skip rating, but I did give it a 1.5.
Ooh, wow. Okay. That is probably our lowest rating, not having it be a skip.
Yeah. I think if it's definitely not, it wasn't like the worst rewatch, which is just kind of like, maybe this episode's not as bad as I give it credit for, but like, it's more like the episode isn't a bad episode to sit through and watch. It's just not a good CSI episode.
Yeah.
Like, as I said, we do better all the time.
Yeah.
And this feels like they cut a lot of corners, and it was maybe hastily written or something. I don't know. But yeah, it didn't quite live up, I think, to the quality of other episodes. If you were watching the show for the first time, I would still say watch this episode, even though there's like basically no character development.
No. Yeah.
The characters, there's not really any great moments for anyone. That's what I mean. Like, I kept, like, a second watch through, I was like, what's good about this episode?
Yeah, like, what?
And I was like, well, this
what can I say about this?
Interesting. Like, that was it. That was my one takeaway. So I was like, I was almost going to give it a 2, and I was like, I can't give this a 2. I really didn't like storyline A that much. Storyline B wasn't enough to carry it. So yeah, I kept it at play, but it's 1.5 stars. Maybe I forget there's another episode I really didn't like this season, but maybe one of my least favorite episodes. Definitely my bottom 3 this season.
Well, I think that's fair. I give it a slightly higher rating of 2 out of 5, but
that was my original rating.
Yeah, but I entirely agree with it. Understand where you're coming from. Storyline A, the concept is fun. Not fun, like the horse died, and that makes me very sad.
Yeah.
So that was minus some points, but it had potential, and yeah, they just seem to like throw all protocol out the window for reasons. Like, I feel like they could have followed protocol and still made a good story out of storyline A, and they just were like, nah, like not gonna bother. Storyline B definitely story-wise carried this episode. I would also give it a watch. I did notice a few things on the second watch through, I will admit, that I was like, oh, all right, like, yeah, that's a good, like, I didn't notice that the first time I watched it. There were a few of those moments, but it's not, but as you mentioned, there's no character development. There's things that are frustrating that only feel probably more frustrating on a second watch through of it. You're like, oh yeah, that really doesn't, I don't like how they did that. So 2 out of 5 stars. Watch. It's okay. Like if you don't watch it, it's not going to really impact the rest of your watching CSI. Like, there's nothing you learn in this episode that is like critical to the future of CSI by any stretch of the imagination, but it is what it is. It's a meh episode.
Fun fact, I was looking back, our other Vampire Diaries spot the guest star was the mayor, Bonnie's dad.
Yes.
It was Rick Worthy. And that was One Hit Wonder was the name of that episode.
Okay.
Gave that one 2 stars.
Oh man, so we're not getting a good track, and I feel like we're gonna have more Vampire Diaries.
We had Ian Sawmile.
Yes, but he was never
in.
We did
season or something, and I think that episode was actually pretty good.
His episode was pretty good. His was either the very end of season 1 or the very beginning of season 2.
Yeah.
I feel it was either very end of a season or the very beginning of a season. I know exactly what episode you're talking about. So he held it up, but otherwise it's a 2 out of 3, not great for episodes of Vampire Diaries.
It's on a downward trajectory.
On a downward trajectory. Started high, going down. We'll see if they end up bringing it back up or not. I'm not sure they're going to.
Watch an episode and I see Nina Dobrev.
Yeah, we're like, nope, sorry. I'll just have to do that episode on my own. We're like, hi, this is the Raven.
It's gonna be 0 stars in this episode.
I'll just have to be like, Nick gives us a 0. So here's my thoughts on this episode as we go through it. Let's see. I don't think we're going to give the next episode 0 stars, but I guess we'll find out when we return next week to review season 3, episode 22, Play with Fire. In the meantime, you can support us on Patreon at a CSI podcast. You can also find us on Facebook, same way. We're also on the Bluesky. We're on Bluesky at Who Are You CSI Pod. We're technically still on Twitter at the same handle, and we're on Instagram as well. So feel free to follow us and engage with us. We really enjoy hearing from you. So even if you message us to tell us that you don't agree with us, that's fine. Like we enjoy the feedback. We enjoy hearing what you have to think about our episodes, the CSI episodes. So definitely engage. We really enjoy it.
We often disagree.
Yes. So it's totally okay.
So even if we agree, you can disagree with us.
Conflict can be healthy. We don't want you to like aggressively disagree. Don't be rude about it. But like, we can have healthy conflict.
Different opinions. So
different opinions are great.
Actually, I think this thing.
Yeah.
And chime in. Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. So feel free to reach out to us on any of those channels. So, but otherwise, we will see you next week.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.